My name is Emma Hayes, and I'm 43 years old. I don't have any children from my second marriage. My husband is a kind man who never misses our monthly dates, no matter how busy he gets. He always keeps his promises. I know I shouldn't compare him to my first husband, but I have never regretted my divorce, nor have I regretted remarrying. This month marks our 8th wedding anniversary. My husband reserved a table at a fancy restaurant with a beautiful view of the ocean. I thought we were going to have a wonderful evening, but then I ran into the last person I wanted to see, Victor Thompson, my ex-husband from 13 years ago. We were about to leave the restaurant after finishing our meal when my husband excused himself to go to the restroom. I stood by the window, admiring the view of the ocean and reflecting on the beautiful moments my husband and I had shared looking at the sea together. Just then, I heard someone call my name. When I turned around, I saw Victor. Well, what a surprise, he said with a smirk. Do you think a regular ocean looks nice to someone like you, who's basically broke? Victor, long time no see. What are you doing here? I asked. He sat down in my husband's seat and looked at me with a mocking expression. Why am I here? I should be asking you that. Can someone like you, who doesn't have much money, really afford to eat at a place like this? Or is this a once-in-a-lifetime thing? I sighed. It's our wedding anniversary, he scoffed. I see. Poor people can only come to places like this on anniversaries, huh? I come here often, you know. You're still pathetic. Isn't there someone with you? I asked. Yeah, there is, he replied. I just sent her to pay. You know, handling money is a woman's job. I thought to myself that he hadn't changed at all, always belittling women. Then I noticed his lover from 13 years ago. She had aged quite a bit. Her beauty had faded, and she looked worn out. It seemed that while Victor was living the good life, his partner had suffered. You're still wearing those shabby clothes, he said. Aren't you embarrassed to dress like that? His words made me feel disgusted, but before I could respond, I saw my husband approaching. He had been watching us from a distance, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Excuse me, my husband said, stepping in between us. Do you need something? Victor raised an eyebrow. Your wife? She's your wife. Yes, my husband replied. And you need to leave. Victor sneered at him. You must be just another useless, broke man. Poor women always remarry poor men, huh? I felt my heart sink, but I stayed calm. Please don't be rude. My husband is a very respectable man. Victor snorted dismissively. A respectable man, huh? That's rich. You must be nothing more than a failure. I thought about how little Victor had changed. He'd always been selfish. Even though he worked for a large company, he wasn't good at his job. He was just good at flattering his bosses. He would take credit for his juniors' achievements and blame them for his mistakes. By the time we divorced, he had been promoted to manager. Victor often claimed to be an elite employee, but I never thought of him that way. I graduated from a prestigious university, while Victor was always bragging about attending a special school. When we were dating, I believed his exaggerated stories, thinking he was intelligent. But after we married, I discovered that was his only real skill, pretending. He often belittled me for not completing college. Your parents couldn't afford to send you to university, right? It's better that way. You didn't have the brains for it anyway. If your family had been rich, you would have gone, but someone as stupid as you would never make it. But that wasn't the truth. My family wasn't poor. I just wanted to start working sooner than go to college. Enough excuses, he'd say. You can't stop making excuses. You're an incompetent woman, but it's fine for women, isn't it? Even if they're incompetent or stupid, as long as they're good-looking, they can get by. If they marry a competent man, they can live well. I was shocked by his words, especially after we were married. His transformation was incredible. His parents weren't wealthy. His father was just a director. Yet, he always looked down on others he thought were less fortunate. You really can't do anything right. You can't cook, you can't clean, and you can't even have children. Marrying you was a huge mistake. He would always say it wasn't a physical issue that stopped me from having children. It was the stress caused by him. My family had always valued being careful with money and appreciating what we had, but when I cooked with radish leaves to save money, he yelled, "Are you trying to feed me trash?" and threw the meal in the trash. That moment made me realize just how different we were. One day, he told me he had a lover, a woman much younger than he was. He pushed for a divorce, saying it would be better for him to remarry someone younger. I was relieved to divorce such a man, so I signed the papers. "Who is this man, Emma?" my husband asked. "He's my ex-husband, Victor Thompson," I replied. "Oh, I see," my husband said quietly. I had already shared with him everything Victor had done and said to me. It had been a painful 13 years, and I had shared it all, tears and all. My husband listened in silence and finally said, "Let's be happy from now on." Victor sneered. "You really dared to marry someone like her? Since you're marrying someone from a poor family, you must be broke too." "Well, maybe," my husband replied calmly. "Maybe not." "Of course you are," Victor continued. "So you're a broke man too, huh? Marrying a poor person means you're broke too, am I right?" "Why did you divorce such a wonderful person?" my husband asked. "Wonderful? Your eyes must be fooling you," Victor scoffed. "A truly wonderful wife is someone like mine." He pointed to his wife, who stood there looking embarrassed. "Is that woman your wife?" my husband asked. "Yes, she's beautiful, isn't she?" Victor replied proudly. "She's actually my boss's daughter." Marrying the boss's daughter helps one climb the career ladder faster. But marrying a poor woman like you probably means you're just a regular employee. "Regular employee?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "What are you trying to prove? A low-class guy marrying a low-class woman means you'll both stay poor for the rest of your lives. And you think you deserve to eat at a fancy restaurant like this?" "This level of restaurant isn't a problem for us," my husband calmly replied. Victor scoffed. "Yeah, sure, if that's what you think." Just then, a waiter passed by, and my husband pulled out a black card, instructing him to settle the bill. Victor's eyes widened in surprise, but he tried to hide it. "Is that a black card?" he sneered. "You're showing off a card like that here? You're not used to it, are you? You must have borrowed it from someone." Flashing the card around. "But later you'll have to pay back the person who lent it to you, right? I bet you're scared to spend money here." "It's all just an act," Victor continued. "That's funny. Who would lend their card to someone like me?" my husband replied. "No matter how naive someone is, they wouldn't lend a card like this." "How would you know that?" Victor challenged. "You shouldn't say such insulting things," I added. "What's insulting? I'm just stating the truth. There's no way you could be healthy if you married a poor woman like her." Victor turned to me. "Your wife is poor, you say?" "Yes, that's right. Her family lives in a run-down one-floor home." "You knew that, right? Or maybe you were too embarrassed to visit her home, so you went to a family restaurant instead. Meeting her parents at a family restaurant for a marriage proposal is unheard of, but for poor people like you, I guess it's normal." "A family restaurant?" I said, "The fact that you thought of that means you must have done it yourself. If you hadn't experienced it, you wouldn't have thought of it." "What are you talking about?" Victor said, sounding defensive. "I'm not short on money. I wouldn't do something so cheap." "You came up with it, though," my husband said. "I never would have thought of it." My husband turned to me. "Right, Emma? Well, I think I'd like to go to a family restaurant occasionally," I replied, "but we rarely get the chance." "Exactly," Victor retorted. "You're lying. When you were with me, you were happy to go to family restaurants." "That's because I had never really been to one before," I explained. Victor raised his voice. "Oh, I bet you sure talk big now, coming to a fancy restaurant like this and acting all important. Maybe that's you. It seems like you don't fit in here. Do you think I don't fit in here?" I said, "There's no way I'm out of place. You're the one who doesn't belong here. Do you even know who I am? Why would I know you? My husband replied calmly, If you want me to remember you, just become famous. Victor scoffed. I am well known, but I guess it's impossible for someone like you to know me. You think I'm just a regular employee? I'm a manager, not just an employee. A manager, my husband said, raising an eyebrow. Is that supposed to impress me? Just then, the chauffeur arrived and greeted my husband politely. Sir, your car is ready. Thank you, my husband replied. Victor looked confused. What's going on? Oh, you're probably just the president of some small company, Victor said. No, I work for a major corporation, the Brooks Group, and I'm a manager there, my husband explained. Oh, so you're still just a manager? Victor scoffed. Staying as a manager at your age won't get you far. This man works at our company, my husband said calmly. Yes, he's been with us for a long time. What do you mean, our company? Victor said, You're just an office lady from a small business. That's right, I replied. But I don't have kids or any reason to quit my job. You can't have kids. Victor said, I knew it. Something's wrong with you. Hey, that's crossing the line. I said, feeling frustrated. My wife is perfectly fine, my husband said, standing up for me. If she's fine, why can't she get pregnant? Victor taunted. I don't need to explain that to you, my husband replied firmly. You can't say it because it would prove something's wrong with her. This man is hopeless, Victor muttered. Yes, he's beyond saving, my husband replied calmly. I understand. He's fired. Kelly, please contact HR. What? What are you saying? You think you can shock me with that? What company president are you claiming to be? Are you trying to fool me with this obvious act? Are you stupid? Jeremy snapped. My husband is the president of the Brook Group, I said calmly. What? That can't be true, Jeremy exclaimed, his face turning pale. But the driver nodded with a look of pity. Is he really our president? Yes, he is, I replied. And I am his wife and the vice president of our company. That's ridiculous. Jeremy scoffed. How could Kelly, from a poor family, end up as vice president with just a high school diploma? Those things don't matter. Whether someone graduated from high school or college doesn't determine their worth, I said firmly. That's ridiculous. Jeremy stammered. I will never forgive anyone who insults my wife, my husband said, his tone resolute. But there's a union. The union will protect us employees. You're a manager, right? Jeremy sneered. Managers aren't union members, so you're not protected by the union. Didn't you know that? My husband replied. Jeremy stood there, stunned. But my husband didn't care and asked me, Shall we go? We left the table. But that night, perhaps bothered by what happened, Jeremy called. His tone was completely different from his earlier arrogance. Kelly, it's been a while. What do you mean? We already talked this afternoon, I said, confused. Oh, yes, what can I do for you? I asked, sensing the shift in his demeanor. Your dismissal hasn't been processed yet, Jeremy said hesitantly. You were just joking, right? About you being the vice president and your husband being the president. No, it's all true. I'm surprised you don't know who your own company's president and vice president are. But why would you be the vice president? Jeremy asked, incredulous. The best way I can support my husband is by being in that position, I explained. But it's strange, Jeremy continued. Why would a high school graduate be the vice president? It's not strange at all, I said calmly. I graduated high school because I wanted to start working early, but after we separated, I earned a college degree. Really? He asked, astonished. Yes. There are schools you can attend from home. So, you really are the president's wife? Jeremy said, sounding disbelieving. Yes, I replied. We got married after I divorced you. I met the president soon after, and we dated for about 5 years before getting married. Married? Why would the president take an interest in someone like you? Jeremy said, his tone still rude. Stop being so rude, I responded, now irritated. Oh, sorry, he said sarcastically. Connections are strange, aren't they? I just happened to meet the president. But even so, why would he marry someone poor like you? Is he a philanthropist? No one marries for charity, I said firmly. Then did he marry you to make you a slave? Jeremy continued, mocking me. Maybe today you got lucky and went to a fancy restaurant. But usually you must be eating plain meals and living a difficult life where you can't even buy what you like, right? Why would you think that? That's not true at all, I said. You're the only one who would think like that. There's no way you could marry such a rich man, Jeremy muttered. Why do you think so? I asked. Rich people have connections with politicians and other wealthy people. If a poorly raised woman like you shows up at their parties, it would embarrass the president. Or maybe he lets his mistress attend instead. You're making wild assumptions, I said, starting to lose patience. If you keep looking down on me like this, you'll truly regret it. I'm just concerned for you, Jeremy replied. A woman with a poor upbringing like you marrying a rich man, like the president, will only suffer. A regular employee's husband would suit you better. Marrying someone richer than me? You must be a foolish woman who can't see. Who's the fool here? I interrupted. If you're just calling to say that, I'm hanging up. No, wait, he said quickly. I'm not trying to insult you. It's just that you come from poverty, and that can't be helped. Thinking I'm looking down on you for that is completely wrong. You say I come from a poor family, but my father is wealthy, I said, my voice steady. Your family is poorer than mine. I didn't mention it back then, because of your pride, but your family home isn't even half the size of mine. My father is just a department head, and you're still just a manager, Jeremy retorted dismissive. That's not true, I replied. When I proposed to you, we were living in a small single-story house. That was because we were renovating our home at the time. All our belongings were stored elsewhere, and it was just a temporary residence. There was no need to move to a big house. My mother said so. That can't be true, Jeremy said, still stubborn. You don't have to believe it, I said calmly. But since the renovation is finished, even if you say you want to visit my parents' home, you've stubbornly refused to go. I couldn't tell you the truth back then. Who would want to visit such a poor, run-down house? You really are hopeless, he said, clearly frustrated. Then I'll send you a picture, I said. I sent him a photo of a large mansion. That's my house. I lived there for a while after our divorce. What? That can't be true, Jeremy exclaimed. It is true, I said, my voice firm. If this is true, then why were you working as an office lady in a small company? If you're so rich, you wouldn't need to work. And if you did, wouldn't it be at a large corporation? My father is the president of a major company, I explained. That company was a new one he started. When it came time to decide who would be the president, my brother was chosen for the role, so I volunteered to handle the administrative work. Now that company has grown to the top of the industry. Is that true? Were you really so rich? Jeremy asked, stunned. Yes, I said. This is the truth. This is the real me. The person you used to look down on. So that's why you could marry the president? Jeremy said, his voice finally softening. That's not it, I replied. I met the president because we shared the same hobbies. We met through our interests and hit it off. He didn't know I was from a wealthy family, and I didn't know he was the president. So, you're at the company where I work because of that? Jeremy asked, still processing it all. Yes, I joined right after our divorce, I said. I had a connection by chance. Why? When you were with me, you were just a clerk at your brother's company. After we divorced, you changed jobs. That's right, I said. My brother's company grew a lot, and he told me it was time to do what I loved. So I decided to pursue what I always wanted to do. Then, just as the senior position became vacant, they offered me the job. But at that stage, I still had no connection with the president. He was still someone high up, out of reach. I don't understand, Jeremy said. How can you have connections like that? Do rich people just connect with other rich people? That's why I'm saying these things don't matter, I said. It's your mindset that's holding you back. As just a manager, I wonder why your wife hasn't gotten tired of you yet. She can't get tired of me, I replied calmly. I'm supporting her. Keep up with that attitude, and you'll get what's coming to you, Jeremy muttered. Anyway, that's the situation, I said firmly. So stop belittling me already. I wasn't trying to belittle you, Jeremy said. Finally defeated, I really thought you were poor, Jeremy said, voice filled with disbelief. About that dismissal you mentioned this afternoon. Oh yes, your dismissal, I replied. After all the mocking you did, it's only natural you be fired. That would put me in a tough spot. Can you talk to the president so I don't get fired? What? You were just mocking me a lot, and now you're asking not to be dismissed? That's impossible, I said, incredulous. You know I have nothing but resentment towards you. Why? The fact that you don't think you're resented is truly surprising, Jeremy said, his voice now full of frustration. Surprising? What have I done to you? I asked, exasperated. There's too much to even remember. It's that much. I bet your wife thinks the same as me. Why don't you ask her what she really thinks? Though I doubt she'll tell you, he added, his words laced with bitterness. I only said those things because I thought you were poor, he continued, trying to justify himself. Why do you think I'm mocking you when I'm just being honest? Once words are spoken, they can't be taken back. You should understand that as an adult, I said coldly. I do understand that, he replied, his voice shaking. But you should also understand why you're being dismissed, right? No, I don't understand at all, Jeremy begged. Please, I'll be in trouble if I'm fired. If it were just about this afternoon, the president might have overlooked it. But then you had to call and ask all these questions. My husband is here now, and he's frowning. He really thinks you're hopeless. Maybe you should just give up. There's no saving you, I said, my tone firm. No. If the president is right there, why can't you just say something? It's only natural for a husband and wife to be together. He paused, then added nervously. Besides, you didn't ask if someone was with me, did you? That's true. But you've made things worse for yourself. You mocked not just me, but my parents and my husband too, I replied, unmoved. Look, I didn't think you'd get this angry. Please forgive me. If I had known you were wealthy, I wouldn't have said such mocking things. I won't say them again. Please forgive me, Jeremy begged. I shook my head. Just give up. I think your dismissal order will come down tomorrow. Wait, please. Jeremy's voice echoed on the other end of the phone, but I hung up and turned to my husband. The next day, Jeremy came to the president's office, looking pale with dark circles under his eyes. He seemed to be in really bad shape. I was in a meeting with my husband, discussing business matters, when I was shocked by Jeremy's appearance. Jeremy, what's wrong? I asked, concerned. I'm very sorry, Jeremy apologized, as he slumped into a chair. What are you doing here? Please, just don't fire me, he pleaded. My husband, the president, had already heard about the conversation from the previous day. He had guessed my responses during the call, and I had told him everything. As a result, his impression of Jeremy was very poor, and his anger was even greater than mine. I am truly sorry. I didn't know your wife was from a wealthy family, Jeremy said, his voice weak. I think she's a perfect match for the president's wife. I also heard she graduated from university, even if it was through correspondence. She's a hard worker, unlike my own wife. So, you decided she wasn't good enough for you and got rid of her, right? My husband, the president, looked at Jeremy with cold eyes. Jeremy looked up at him, surprised. How did you know that? Of course I know. I've told my husband everything. We're married after all. Or do you and your wife not talk about your past? I replied, No, it's not like that, Jeremy stammered. But that was a long time ago. I was young then. I thought Kelly was just a poor man's daughter, so I thought it was okay to have a mistress. How does it come to that? My husband asked, incredulous. Is that why you think it's okay to commit sexual harassment or abuse your power? What do you mean? Jeremy said, looking confused. Don't tell me you haven't done it, my husband said. There are complaints from your female coworkers. They say that if our company doesn't handle it, they'll go to the police. Our company was just discussing what to do about it when your disrespectful remarks came yesterday. It's really hopeless, isn't it? I added, shaking my head. That's right, my husband said, his voice filled with disdain. I wouldn't have thought you were actually harassing or bullying, but after seeing you yesterday, it seems all too true. You don't even see women as people, do you? You think they're below you. No, I never, Jeremy protested. Even if that were true, firing you would be too harsh, my husband continued, ignoring him. Please show some mercy. Well, you do have a family, I said. If you were fired, you wouldn't be the only one in trouble. That's right, my husband smirked, glancing at me. So what do you think, Kelly? How about sending Jeremy to our Michigan branch? Wait, Michigan? Jeremy looked at us, baffled. Yes, Michigan, my husband said. It's in a region with very few people and is practically unsustainable for a company. The former president, who came from that town, established a branch there to help the local people. But it's a lonely place with just one employee. The previous employee reportedly went mad from the isolation. We want you to turn that branch around in 5 years, my husband continued. If you can do that, we'll bring you back here. Of course, if you can't, you'll spend your retirement in Michigan. Thank you, I appreciate it, Jeremy said, thinking this was an act of mercy from the president. He set off for Michigan full of hope, but both my husband and I knew it was an impossible task. Working alone in a small town with a tiny population, it was clear there wouldn't be any profit to be made. Jeremy moved to the branch, bringing his mistress, who had become his wife. But she soon grew unhappy with the cold isolation and reached her limit. Eventually, she left, and Jeremy's salary dropped significantly. Despite being called the branch manager, his pay was minimal. This led to daily arguments with his wife. Although he boasted that he could return to the head office in 5 years, his city-bred wife didn't believe him. She left divorce papers behind and went back to the city. Jeremy tried his best for a year, but no matter how hard he worked, the population didn't grow and no profits came. Eventually, he realized that no effort would change anything. In 2 days, he submitted his resignation. After leaving the company, Jeremy tried to contact his wife, but by then, she had found someone new. Not only was Jeremy ignored, but he was also beaten up by her new partner and ended up in the hospital. After being discharged, Jeremy searched for a job, but at his age, nothing came up. Life became harder, and he ended up living in a shabby, run-down apartment. The only job he could find was as a nighttime store clerk. The man who had once boasted of graduating from a prestigious university now stood alone in a store at night. As for me, I continued to be cared for by my kind husband, enjoying another wonderful date this month. Marrying him had changed my life in so many ways, and I was grateful for that. Divorce had been the best decision for me,